Thank you. Good evening. It's Monday, May 14th. This is a Athens City Council meeting, committee agendas tonight. Just a couple things before we start. I did hear a council member over there mentioning we've been hearing from our audiences live in this room and in TV land that they can't always hear us. So bring your microphones down to a level where you can speak into them, please. Don't need to yell, just yell into them. And I think Member Patterson has a quick announcement also. I know we're stealing a little bit of time here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just briefly, what I wanted to do is just to remind everybody that this Thursday from 5 to 8 at the Community Center is the Challenge by Choice and Disabilities Speaks, which is this is the third year that the Athens City Commission on Disabilities has held this event. Everyone's invited, anyone's invited to come down. There's several different disabilities simulations that individuals can take part in, and you'll also be hearing from individuals who have volunteered over a 4 or 5 hour period of time to take on a disability. I will be taking on a disability, a communications disability, and then reporting on it that evening. So I just wanted to make that announcement and make sure everyone's aware of Disability Speaks.
Thank you. We have a full agenda with 4 committees holding hearings. We're going to begin with the Transportation Committee, chaired by Allahu Ghazni.
Thank you, and good evening. We have a couple items tonight. These are public events that will be occurring hopefully on Court Street throughout the summer. The first one is a cruise-in that's organized every year, a series of cruise-ins to show cars and listen to good music and just sort of a good social get-together. And these are organized by the Plains Lions Club. We've done this for several years now. I think as long as I've been on council, they've been occurring with pretty regular frequency. The calendar for these, the first one would be held Friday, June 1st at 5:30 p.m. And this is an Uptown Athens Oldies Bash and cruise-in. So sounds like fun. There's one also later on in the summer scheduled for July 27th, also a Friday at the same time, and September 14th, getting into the beginning of the school year, and that's also a Friday. So what we need from council in order to make this happen is a closure of the street. That's a pretty simple ordinance and I don't think there's much else attached to that, probably just a street closure.
Not the whole of Court Street.
No, it's usually between Union and State, so it's 2 blocks approximately.
Right.
Right? No way, since one block usually.
One block.
One block.
One
Usually
block.
Washington State.
Yeah.
And, they just bring the cars in and park them and listen to music.
And so it's good to have, I think, good to pull people into the uptown area and just sort of a nice community event. Are there any questions on the cruise-in items? Because the first one is scheduled for June 1st, we will probably vote on this a little bit early before the third reading. Hopefully that's,
June or July
right.
1st?
June 1st.
June 1st, okay.
Yeah. Great. The second item on the agenda is an event we all know well, the Boogie on the Bricks annual festival or party, or what we would want to call it. The Boogie on the Bricks event, and this is it seems to get bigger every year with a lot of family attendees and a huge involvement from many people in the community. I know several people in this room I've seen volunteer during this event in years past. This year it's scheduled for July 21st. This is a Saturday, and it goes a pretty good part of the day. This involves a few things. Because there's amplified music, we like to suspend the noise ordinance to make sure that the event is not in violation of that. We offer free parking in the parking garage to make sure that people that attend have a place to park, and to sort of encourage people to attend that event. At least we have in the past. Another item would be to close the street, and there are two other things that we're considering, and that's to make it a glass-free zone, just for safety purposes, and also to regulate vending as a possibility. And so these will, I'm not sure what the final form will be. This may come similar to Halloween, where we have several different ordinances to cover these different items. Any questions from council members on the Boogie on the Bricks event, or anything you'd like to add?
Go ahead.
Acknowledge the date again?
Yes, July 21st, that's a Saturday, of course. And I don't have the exact hours, but the street will be closed
Thank you.
the entire day. Do we know the exact blocks, Paula?
Pardon me?
Do we know the exact area this year?
Court, Union, Washington, and State. So it's
Okay.
that full length.
So
And
yeah.
he's got it actually starting at 7 a.m. just to set up for in order to get it closed.
Get the equipment set up and things like that. And so this year, just a reminder to people, this is separate from the Brew Week event, in which they've occurred on the same day in the past, one of the Brew Week events. So this is separate, just to make sure people remember that. Yeah, Member Reisner.
If it's going to be a glass-free zone, what do you foresee in terms of recycling and garbage and paper cups as opposed to plastic?
I don't have answers to those. I'm not sure if the organizers have begun to address that yet. Are you aware, Paula?
We always attempt to have recycle bins out at this event, but I don't know about the cups question, whether or not they bring their own, each individual brew maker and whatever.
Right.
I can find out.
Because there's,
In the past, of course, it overlapped with Ohio Brew Week, so many times they had a customized cup for the event. So since it's separated out now, I'm not sure what they'll do at this point. We'll find out, indeed.
Good questions, though. Thank you. And any other questions or comments? All right. We do have a couple miscellaneous items, and hopefully I won't miss any. The first one is a fuel purchasing agreement that the city is negotiating with the university for many years. Instead of having our own fuel tanks to refuel city vehicles, we've partnered with the university and been able to use their refueling station for our city vehicles. And this is, I guess, the current agreement has expired, so we're readdressing that. Paula, would you like to fill us in on some of the details?
A little bit, thank you. The contract or agreement we're operating under is since 1998. There have been no changes in that period of time. So the draft that we're working on right now shows no real change in terms of the paying for the cost of the fuel plus the current state tax rate, but it does include a 3% per year increase in the administrative portion of that. They indicate that will not only cover their administrative costs, it will partially cover maintenance and replacement of fuel pumps and computerized hardware and software. I have been asked by some members of council and administration to make sure that we include the reporting requirements that we need for our green fleet. So we'd like to have this be effective July 1, so that may indeed again require an emergency clause when we get this to the readings.
any idea who the vendor will be for the fuel?
I think they go out on the market and purchase it. I don't think they have one vendor at this point, but I may be wrong on that. I know the price fluctuates often with, like any gas, and, there is a surcharge. The surcharge is administration. So, it's up to them. They're running their gas pumps. We're just piggyback off their system. Many years ago, we had underground tanks on West State Street, and we eliminated those once it was time to get rid of them and combine services. I think the only other thing is in the administration is to make sure we do get the billing correct, so we don't have to go through all the permutations. It takes a lot of time for them to parse out what the costs are, and hopefully we can get the mileage down too, as you say, reporting-wise.
It's both ends. The other item that they're going to include is because we're contracting now with Athens Transit for the bus system to include that, because as you know, the Summit bus runs have become part of the public transit vehicles. There may be other additions we would hope to see in the future to try to coordinate all the public bus transit systems.
Thank you. So just a couple minor things to add. It's estimated we use about 80,000 gallons of fuel per year for city vehicles. So fuel costs, just to give everybody a rough idea, I don't know what the exact number is, but rough cost at current prices is approaching 300,000 per year, so pretty substantial cost. But it does help to purchase it through this partnership with the university because the prices are a little better than retail.
So
Yeah.
then we would now be including, remember guys, we would include the bus, the Go Bus on top of that?
The Go Bus isn't run by...
Okay, so not the Go Bus, because I was
No, the Athens
confused about
Transit
that.
system,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Okay. But our contract is with McDonald, and that includes Athens Transit as well as the Summit, which is actually a private concern.
Oh, the summer.
And now it's essentially being run out of half cap now, so the billing would be a pass-through. They'll be billing us, and then we'll be billing half cap along the way. Just an example, for instance, the street crew, we appropriated about $58,000 for this year in terms of the street. And if I look at, we have 18,000 for fire and 57,000 for police, just to give you a ballpark of some of the costs per department. Recreation runs about 10, and I don't see anything for community center right off the top. So there's quite a bit that gets spent out there. Quite a chunk of money. And it fluxes again with the market. In 2008, when I first got into office, we were really spending a lot more. And then we actually had to up it in 2009. Fortunately, we had excess because the price was down. So again, it goes to the market forces.
Great, thank you. Anything else on the fuel agreement? The last miscellaneous item that I'm aware of is an announcement about a cycling event here in Athens called Athens Simply Cycling. And this is, I believe this is the first year. Chris, would you like to fill us in a little bit about this event that's coming up this weekend?
Yeah, and it's in conjunction with the bike rodeo that many people might be familiar with. And so the bike rodeo is happening at its usual time from 9 to noon. Then there'll be a short break, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. They'll have a meet and greet with Athens cyclists, and so they're going to have information, also help on fixing a flat, and working and looking at different displays of bikes. And there will be representatives from the Athens Bicycle Club, the OU Mountain Bike Club, the Hockhocking-Adena Bikeway Committee, and other groups. And this is sponsored by the City of Athens Bicycle and Pedestrian Subcommittee, and that's been a group of volunteers that have been working together for years and coordinating this. And we've had been very fortunate to have a few champions who said they really wanted to take education, including education of adults about bicycles and bicycle safety. So it should be a great event. So it's free, and everybody's encouraged to stop by.
Bicycle on over.
Thank you. Is there anything that we need to address under miscellaneous from the administration?
Nothing else as far as I know.
At this time.
Great. That's it.
Thank you, Member Gosney. We're going to move on now to Finance and Personnel Committee, chaired by Chris Knight.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have about 3 items tonight that on the agenda. The first of them being the 2012, what we've been calling the amnesty program. And people who watch our city council meetings might have heard some of our discussions earlier. Tina Timberlane and Auditor Kathy Hecht have been here to present to us. And we have 2 pieces of legislation moving forward. Very briefly, one of them is an authorization for the city auditor to work with what's called the CCA, the Central Collections Agency, which is a group in Cleveland, Ohio that has access to a database of federal tax records. And the amnesty program that I did want to mention, I'm just trying to have as many mentions of it as we can so the general public's aware of it. The amnesty is going to be between June 1 and June 29th. And then our program will begin shortly after that, where we will be working with that Cleveland firm to look at delinquent income taxes. So it's looking at delinquent taxpayers, also businesses that are filing federally but not with the city. So Kathy, I think you had an easy way of explaining it the other day when you said something about if you live in the city and you've been paying federal tax.
You
Or
probably
state.
owe local income tax, right?
Yeah, yeah, so.
Thanks, I forgot what I said. But yeah, I'm actually here just editing our PSAs and things that will go out very, very soon. But yes, if you have any questions, please at least call, or you can visit our website. That information will be out there. We'll have a link on there probably by next week or the end of this week. I think Scott's just waiting for our information. And yes, I encourage anyone who is wondering to do that. It would be a much easier route to go than waiting for the CCA to contact them. And just if you have any questions, you should go ahead and call us. And we absolutely will work with taxpayers, and we do it on a regular basis
Okay.
as far as payment plans, things like that.
Okay, thank you. The second item has to do with the East State Street note that the City Hall has, and we have a due date coming up of June 29th, 2012. And what we do on an annual basis is pay off a portion of this amount of money that was borrowed for these East State Street improvements. At the current moment, we owe $750,000, and we will make plans to pay off $250,000 of this that's owed, and then refinance the last $500,000. So we'll begin that legislation next week. Yes.
If I may, is it
Yes.
possible for Andy to recoup some of his costs for putting in the pedestrian crossings on East State via the TIF?
From the TIF money, I can look into that.
Thank you.
We're putting, what, 2, 3 in?
To Kroger and Walmart.
Super.
He's also purchased a new sign to enhance the community center crossing.
Greatly needed. That's good. Okay.
Okay, and just, Chris, I don't know if you mentioned it and I missed it, but our interest rate for that's going to be 0.40%.
For the refinance.
Yep.
Not bad.
Great. Thanks to you for finding it, and to the bank that's helping support that low of an interest rate.
Locally owned bank,
Yep. Okay.
good to us.
The next agenda item, Councilmember Patterson will introduce some information about the Economic Development Council and the revolving loan fund.
Thank you, Member Nicely. Yeah, this is a notice that we just received from the Ohio Department of Development for the CDBG revolving loan fund waiver approval. This waiver approval was put forward for the purchase and installation of a base and rubberized matting to go at the South Side Park in the playground area underneath the playground equipment. And it falls under the area of public facilities improvement. The amount is $80,000 that we have been granted this waiver to transfer those funds from the revolving loan account. And so therefore, we'll be working on legislation for putting through, number one, the transfer and also the appropriation. As I understand it, Mr. Mayor, we also have bids that need to go forward. Anything else that you need to, or want to bring up?
Well, again, we're waiting for the approval letter. We just got it this morning. And the next thing, of course, is appropriation. And Rich will probably be looking at how he wants to do it, how he wants to put out the bid, and the bid specs. So that's the next thing to run through. So probably we need appropriation and authorization to spend. And I gave you a letter so you know what's going on there, Kathy.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Go ahead, Jen. Once all this paperwork and everything gets settled, when do you foresee actual construction and installation?
The conversations I've had with the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Director is that probably August. Couple of conditions. Earlier this year, it would be too cold and too wet. He hesitates to do it during the summer when there's a lot of kids there, because trying to keep the kids off it would be difficult. I think he's been talking about August when the kids are gone or something like that. Some spectrum in there where it's dry, warm, and not a lot of kids to get stuck in it. Go ahead.
So the Rotary has been informed of this?
They've been told it. Whether it's actually perked through all the members, I do not know. And again, how we go about it, I've had conversations with Rich Campitelli, the director, back and forth, whether we do it in-house, do it by service, and I leave it up to him to make that choice. I think we had this conversation last week. So maybe if they're watching the broadcast, they got the message.
The important thing about this obviously is that it's going to make for the first playground in Athens, if not Athens County, that does have an ADA accessible rubberized matting surface. It's not just a safety issue, it's an issue of making playground access equitable to anyone who wants to use the playground.
And all the, essentially, most of the equipment is in right now, and it is, its intention is to be accessible to all. The equipment is designed for everybody, so it's just a question of getting it over presently the mulch and be able to make it as a wheelchair accessible. Any other questions?
Thanks for all your hard work.
I had the easier part of it. We still got more work.
Okay. And any other miscellaneous finance and personnel committee items?
No.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the Planning and Development Committee, which is chaired by Member Fall.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I have the application for the renewal request for a revocable license. We do these kind of clumps periodically through the year. These are for renewals, so they've already, the use is already there in our right-of-way. The first one is for a sign at 219 Columbus Road. And this is put in by Michael Holbrook of Muffler Man, and if you drive by, you see Muffler Man there. And the second one is for 80 East State Street, and that was put in by Prokos, Demetrius Prokos, and that's more of a facility. It's not necessarily a sign. So I will put these forward. They have all their application is complete, and all the paperwork has been signed off by city administration. So
This is a
pretty
10-year.
10-year, pretty straightforward. We've done a zillion of these. So, any questions? So I will put that in next week. Second item on my agenda is we've been working in various combinations of council and administration and various commissions on various things to protect our infrastructure and our natural resources within the city of Athens. The Wellhead Protection Plan was one of the first ones that went through. Tonight, I want to introduce a couple of the others that we've been working on to give council ample time to review and to put in concerns, questions, or recommendations for changes. The first one of this is an ordinance amending the Athens City Code Title V Public Utilities. Presently, we do have certain water regulations. The Service Safety Director can call for what is called a water emergency, which authorizes the water usage be regulated in certain types of emergencies, low water, fire emergencies, those sort of things. I would like to amend this ordinance to include permit, an annual permit issued by the Service Safety Director required for all unmetered surface water withdrawal. That's withdrawal or consumption in the city. And it's been suggested, the permit says 50,000, it's been suggested at 200,000 by Andy Stone. Some of this is, some people say there is private property rights, and that's very true. This permit has nothing to do with private property or riparian property rights that are established in the Ohio Revised Code and the state constitution. This is purely a registration of the use of surface water. Reason why we do this, especially a city, is if there is a water emergency and the city has to warn people about water emergencies, water spills that are upstream, other pollution events such as a tanker going into the Hocking River. Right now, we don't have any information as to who is using surface water, who's putting in a pump and using the surface waters, especially the Hocking River. So it would make sense for a entity such as the city to be able to know what's going on, know who's using it, so that if there's an emergency, we can warn people about it. And this would be achieved by having an annual permit issued by the Surface Safety Director. So, questions from, you've reviewed it, your Service Safety Director? I'd like to.
I have shared the concern that my understanding from the law director's office is indeed regarding property owners and riparian rights to have reasonable use of the water that travels through their property. So I've stated that.
Something else that's been brought to our attention, and Andy Stone brought this up in our discussions in this, is that there also maybe needs to be a companion piece of legislation looking at large volume users of treated water, city treated water, so that we can register and know who is large volume, because that's an issue too, and especially if there's water emergencies and such. So that's something that's been the start of talks with Mr. Stone.
We had that already. I mean, wouldn't that be reflected in the metering, I thought?
Well, yeah, but there's a difference. I mean, some cities have differential prices for large volume users. And if all of a sudden somebody comes in and starts using 1 million gallons a day, it would be nice to be able to identify them, and so that we can keep tabs on their, because there they have a usage. Is it all going out of the system? Is it going to be 1 million gallons a day and then all flushed back into the treatment system, all in a flush? You know, it's that sort of impact on our water system can be major. So I think that that's something that Mr. Stone brought up as a question. I think it's a legitimate question.
For example, if we were to have some major user, then all of a sudden our water levels in our wells are dropping and we don't have enough to provide for the city residents.
Right. So I think that's something that, well, I'm not sure if it will go in this ordinance or if it makes her, we'll have to look at that and start developing that one. So, any questions from?
I would just say that is happening in other water systems in other parts of this region, be it in Pennsylvania or wherever, where they've had to suspend the water users' rights because they did not have enough water due to the mild winter that we had, lack of snowfall, lack of other things. And so some water systems had to actually stop users because they did not have enough to supply the homes and businesses and whatever. So it is a serious issue.
The question I have is, I think, more of a big picture question. I'm just curious if we know whether our colleagues to the northwest are doing similar things, i.e. is Logan or Nelsonville or Lancaster. It's an aquifer that runs from the northwest to the southeast.
Right.
And it would be nice to know if other cities and townships are moving in the same direction, because for us, in my mind, it would be also nice to know if an emergency happened further up the aquifer chain, whether we are given warning, because it will eventually float our way.
Right. Well, I think this is concerning more the surface water, so that would be Hocking mostly, some of the tributaries. However, I doubt that Logan or Lancaster is doing anything like this. There is, riparian and water rights they are somewhat complicated, and that's why when one is looking at doing this sort of permitting, they have to make sure that you protect the rights of the users, but also there is some responsibility for downstream users that all riparian owners have. You can't put a dam across the river just because you own a riparian strip. There is certain rights and responsibilities that go with that. So, but I don't think Logan or Lancaster is there. Now, maybe Nelsonville may take this as a model and do it. So, Malaku?
Thank you. Looks like it's good to begin looking at these water issues. The first question I have is related to the unmetered surface water withdrawal section or proposed amendment. Would there be any reporting to the city in terms of how much is being used and what it's being used for? Or is this simply if you use more than X number of gallons, you have to let the city know your name and address?
As it is now, it would be just if you use more than X amount, 200,000. Well, I mean, on one level, it is self-reporting, but the university uses surface waters, and as it is presently, there's not a lot of surface water users.
Right.
However, that may change. So,
Thanks. And personally, I think, if we're legally allowed to, I think it would be useful to know how much is being used by anyone that would be required to register. Second is an issue with the city selling its treated water. For me, I think it's pretty counterproductive for the city if say we were having commercial entities that were involved in drilling or other activities like that, uses hundreds of thousands of gallons or millions of gallons. I think it would be counterproductive to allow them to use all the city's resources in treating the water for drilling purposes. I think that's probably wouldn't be their first choice. But has there been any discussion about if we're allowed to regulate the volume that we sell to individuals or companies?
well, that's I think something that we are starting to look at. Whether the city wants to go to differential pricing. There are other towns that have to deal with large users in manufacturing and those sort of things. I think there's an issue of removal from the whole system, where I agree, I mean, using treated water to use for certain things seems, on one level, it would be expensive, but on another level, if water gets to be really tight for certain industries, it could make sense.
And so I guess if we could look at regulating the amount that users are able to buy from the city, and secondary to that, I don't know if this is possible, but the use of the water.
Right.
If we're giving water to an entity that's going to threaten the quality of our water, I think that would be rather self-defeating.
Right.
So
Right.
it'd be interesting to see if there's any
I would
room to regulate that.
I would expect that would be in our water, in the sewer and water sections, not necessarily in this water regulation. And it would not be necessarily covered in this specific sections of,
Yeah.
do you think? I mean,
I would think it would actually be in this
Okay.
chapter, but
well, it might be in
We're
this
just-
chapter, but not these sections.
we're just now
So-
having this
Just beginning.
discussion, so we'll have
So,
more.
but this is something that came up from this discussion about permitting, is this other discussion, so that's going to be so. Jeff?
Are we looking at any legislation concerning subsurface water withdrawal?
That's,
I mean, that's where
Well,
most of the
we-
water is.
that's
We-
already permitted.
The groundwater
Yeah.
is already protected in our wellhead protection area. That
Right.
it doesn't extend beyond that, though, so.
So in order for somebody to go and sink a hole into the aquifer in the wellhead protection area, they would have to be permitted by the city.
Right.
So it's not an allowable activity.
But like Ohio University, they have wells on their golf course. I know because I drilled them.
We
Now,
have
they're outside,
grandfather.
Okay,
Right.
they're outside that,
We're also downstream of a wellhead protection area,
yeah.
so.
We would not.
Yeah,
permit
I
anyone.
understand, but see, there's two things we're talking about. Wellhead protection, quality of the water, but we're also talking about quantity. If I put a well downstream, speaking as a hydrologist, I know what I'm talking about, and I really pump that water, I'm going to drain any other well field around. It'll go upstream too.
It
Yeah.
would take quite a bit, as far as I know.
It would.
The zone of depression is not that large. I mean,
Uh-huh.
with the nearest well field we have, let's say, as you say, the golf course is downstream. The next well field we have is Oblenis, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's 5% of our water flow. The next one after that is West State Street. I don't
Yeah.
think the cone, I think we've done well pools before to see what kind of replenishment we have on our wells.
Mm-hmm.
It'd take quite a bit and a fairly massive well system to do it. I don't think anything the university has would actually pull it.
No, I'm just looking at the future.
How about
Yeah.
private?
Well, and again, there's nothing to stop, the legislation right here would not stop anybody from going just over the city limits and doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, further downstream.
Or
Right.
upstream.
Well, upstream, they're already doing, you have Leax and Burr
Yes.
Oak and everybody
Yes.
else. Right.
We're assuming they're being good stewards of their water.
Well, I think they are. I don't have any problem with them, but if I'm a private developer, and as water resources get more scarce in the future, and they will, T. Boone Pickens is already buying up most of the Ogallala aquifer right now, even as we speak, because he looks at the future and says he sees serious droughts coming. That'd be a great investment for someone to do, just go up and buy a whole bunch of pasture land and just put in some wells, or downstream. So pretty soon we're boxed in. And if you're taking it from downstream and upstream, pretty soon the cone of depression reaches here. Remember, the cone of depression is a shallow aquifer, it's small.
Yes.
Right. So
Okay, but-
it may not go down deep, but it goes out far.
So the question is, how do we control things outside the city limits?
Or even within, yeah.
I think that goes to the bigger question that member Gosney brought up about, or maybe it was Patterson who brought up about the whole issues about what's the region doing in terms of their water supplies.
Which I was just going to add to that. Most of our wellhead protection plan was modeled after Lancaster's, so,
Right.
you know, I wouldn't say they're not doing anything, whether they're
And no,
doing exactly what we
surface
want
water
them to, but
wise, so,
but I'd be surprised,
Right.
they already had it.
Yeah.
Had it, you know, wellhead protection plan when we did ours, so.
well, maybe that goes to looking at a regional, like, you have a regional solid waste district, which we've had.
Watershed region.
We've had such good luck with. You know, looking at it from a regional point of view and just having maybe maybe that's something the Regional Planning Commission can look at. That's a smaller region than Logan and Lancaster, but maybe they can coordinate with the other regional planning commissions and look at having something where it's an annual meeting or something of, I don't know. It's something, I think that it's true that regionally we're going to have to look at things much more.
Well, the Muskegum group, they're selling theirs right now, right? It's permitted, and that's what the 5th largest water source for Ohio is what I
Where is that
read.
now?
Muskegum, north of us. So they are selling permit, yes. I like that regional idea. Regional Planning Commission.
One, if I may, I mean, I certainly like what I believe Member Fall was talking about, which is kind of developing a regional consortium where we sit and start discussing as a region as opposed to a bunch of individual entities and fighting for ourselves. We should be fighting together, or at least representing ourselves as a region.
So, any other questions? Okay. I'm still talking with a couple of the other administration on this, so it may or may not be introduced as an ordinance next week, but probably soon thereafter. Okay, moving right along. My next ordinance is something also that we've been working on with the administration and other members of the Environmental Committee and some community members, is an ordinance amending Title 15 taxes to establish an oil and gas severance tax for the city of Athens. The idea behind this is to provide funds for an oil and gas mitigation and restoration fund for the city of Athens to meet, sorry about the printing, to meet the environmental and resource management needs of the city and to reclaim lands affected by mining, oil, gas extraction, and waste disposal, and is hereby levied an excise tax on the privilege of engaging in the severance of natural resources from over, under, or upon the city of Athens. Now, the state does have a severance tax, and we've probably been hearing about it because Columbus has been arguing back and forth between the governor's office and the state legislature of whether they're going to introduce an increase in the gas and oil severance tax and what the use of that increase will be. Presently, the oil and gas severance levels, the costs are pretty minimal when compared to other states. Even within our region and nationally, you would be surprised. Texas and Louisiana and Oklahoma have some of the highest oil and gas severance taxes. So the idea that they won't come because you're charging a tax is not something that I personally really believe, because it's not like the oil is going to move over to Indiana. So that idea is just doesn't. The other thing is, right now, the governor wants to increase the tax on oil and gas extraction. However, what he wants to use that tax for is a minimal income tax rebate for the state, for the citizens of Ohio. Now, that's all fine and dandy. However, that's not really helping the people or the areas that are impacted, who are going to be impacted the most by having this resource extracted in their backyards, in their city lands, in their county lands. And that just doesn't, having $7 a year more, from our income tax cut is just not enough to make up for potential impacts from this industry. Therefore, that's why I would like to have an oil and gas severance tax for the city of Athens to help, solve potential problems that extraction could result in. Included in this ordinance, there's a lot of definitions, and then it comes down to the cost per ton of coal, per ton of salt. This was modeled on the state severance tax, so that's why it's very inclusive of the types of natural resources you can take out. It also includes clay, so if we have a re-energizing of our clay industry, it would cover that too. And then this would go into an oil and gas mitigation and restoration fund for the city of Athens. So this is, you'll see that some of it is very set, and the language is very detailed. Some of the more draft language is working with the auditor's office to make sure that it makes sense from the administration of it, and penalties and such. And I didn't put Ray's, his really good remarks and his amendments in here. So,
Yeah.
yes, I've been working very closely with Kathy's office, and it's been great. So this is a work in progress. When I get the language and after several more drafts, I will send it out again. So this will probably be introduced maybe in a couple meetings, council meetings. Kathy?
Just to add a few things, the bottom part, 150405, is what Chris asked for our help with, and going through the ORCs, their definitions, rules and all that is cumbersome, much more cumbersome than we want in our ordinance. However, I think Chris did an excellent job with the top part. One thing I want to point out is the failure to file or pay is actually the wording taken from the, and this was Chris's work on this, from the TGT section of our tax ordinance. Right. And I think this is a good idea, just in case any of you go into 5749 in the ORC. Their penalty is that it's a felony. And if you do that, then it has to go through the court system and all that. And so if we can impose our fines just right on top through this, and of course I don't know that we've run everything through Pat yet, but that would help us. And the one other thing, Chris, I haven't had a chance to tell you is we probably need an appeal procedure added to that, which we have in our tax code. Other than that, it's pretty much what I had asked for, a quarterly period. And the forms, et cetera, this is something that we're not familiar with, and so leaving ourselves open to figure out the best way for us to try to enforce this through the tax department. We have a two-person tax department. That gives us some leeway in what we think we can do and what makes it easier for us to enforce this if it comes to this. So.
Thank you. Regarding the section on fines that the auditor alluded to, I was wondering if we could have a brief discussion on that. Is there any thought on whether or not these are not significant enough? My thought is that they should be potentially increased substantially. and more severe. I don't know if there's any thought or discussion on that.
I think this is wording from the transient guest tax, which is the TGT. So, no, I think that would be fine. You're looking at fewer people who would probably pay this tax. So, however, and it's probably a much higher profit industry, and so that would be fine. And there is a balance between too high of penalty and too low of penalty where they would just not really listen to it. There also are limits according to what can be done in the ORC with limits on penalties before you jump into having to go to court. Is that right?
Yeah, I would think so, because we also have that issue with taxpayers. We have penalty and interest charges, but after a certain time and a process that we go through, then we do walk it next door to the law director's office. And so I guess we could add that to this, but that's kind of a given, that if you don't pay your fees, pay what's owed to the city, then you can be prosecuted.
And also, this also has a little section on the fact that you have to pay attention to the contractor registration also, which I think that way we're ensuring that they're paying income tax also. So it's a way of,
I thought that was a great way for Chris to address that personally, because we don't have, the manpower to run around and check these things out and ask people if they're registered or if we have them in our system. And that's how we get a lot of our taxpayers, or when businesses register at the code office, so.
So this is still a draft, and it's work in progress. Kathy and I will work on language, look at the appeals procedure. I know that wasn't included. It's kind of...
Chris more than me, but we're getting there.
Yeah. So, other questions, concerns?
Back to water again, would that be a natural resource?
No.
No?
And that's not covered in this. So, I think water rights is a whole different sticky wicket.
How about brine?
Well, are you severing brine or are you injecting brine?
Severing. I'm taking it out. I want to use brine. Brine has salt, okay? It has stuff in it that I want. I'm in chemical industry like they have down the Ohio River. I want the brine. So I'm going to drill down, I'm going to suck the brine out, then process it and do stuff with it, turn it into sulfuric acid, nitroglycerin and things. So that's a resource. Should be.
Would that be under salt? I mean, is
No,
that a natural?
salt's separate, okay?
Is that a naturally occurring resource, or is that something that they've already
naturally occurring.
injected? So,
No.
So you're saying it should be added, you'd like to see it added?
I'm just throwing ideas out there. Seems like,
I think the worry is right now, they're injecting it into wells rather than taking it out. I think that's the concern of citizens in Athens right now. So it's not an extraction problem.
well, just to back up, the history of Ohio was based upon salt brine. Jackson, Ohio is Jackson, Ohio because there's a salt lick there. And the reason there's a salt lick is because the brine came up out of the ground and evaporated and people got their salt. Brine is a natural resource. I mean, it's why we have a chemical industry on the Ohio River.
right. Well, it says 2 cents per ton of salt, and then we can add brine within there. But it would have to probably be termed naturally occurring brine.
As Member Fall said, this is, both of these are works in progress. And, so as you think of things, let her know. And we'll be hearing these again in stronger form.
Yeah, I'll bring them up the next.
Just one
committee
last
meeting.
question. If someone is already doing an extraction business within the city limits, would they be grandfathered in and exempted from this, or would they?
That's not normally a business that you grandfather in. I mean, it's not,
I'd say that would be a question for the law director.
right. I mean, the thing is if when you put in a new income tax, say Athens didn't have an income tax, you don't grandfather in all the people who are making income. You have an effective date, people know it. So I would think that that's the case in point here.
I was going to add briefly that Chris's list of natural resources is directly from the ORC.
Miscellaneous?
Nope, so,
I just want to mention passing, the planning commission has been canceled for Wednesday. We're going to try to see if we can reschedule it for next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday. On the agenda, of course, is a Title 41 for 2 residences at Mill Street, 152 and 154, I think it is. And so, just so you know.
thank you. And you had something, was that the miscellaneous you were saying?
I was going to do it under city services.
Okay. Okay, so,
Okay, speaking of city services, we'll move into City Services Committee chaired by Member Kent Butler.
Thank you. Right on cue. This evening, we have some information that will be presented to us by Muriel Grimm, who has been working with the CLEAN Committee, or Clean Metrics Information. And there's a number of people in this room that are very familiar with that committee or an organization, which began, I believe, in April 2005, if I'm understanding correctly from information gathered. A number of people, including Ed Newman, the mayor, Paul Weil, Michelle Pappy, Jim Murray. Jim Murray has been involved with this group off and on. And if anyone else also wants to comment on that before Muriel's presentation, it's been in the works for a while. Member Pappy or the mayor, do you have anything?
It's been so long. I think Muriel can present. She's good at this.
Go for it, Muriel.
Thank you, Mel. And if you'd like to present from the podium. Thank you.
I just have a brief philosophical comment as I start, because when you started talking about the regional district for the water, it was like 10 years ago when the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Wellhead Protection suggested that there should be a source water specialist, one of whose jobs was to be in contact with all of the other towns in the area, in the watershed, working on coordinating things. So I guess what I'm thinking now is the problem with litter is it's always on the back burner because it's not really critical. But on the other hand, some of the stuff that I'm bringing up tonight, I can just imagine it coming up 10 years from now. So anyway, I'm hoping that somehow, you'll be able to keep litter in your minds.
Every
Let's see,
day.
I'll pass out the reports first, and then I'll just...
Thank you. Thanks.
Unfortunately, we did not think about forming a metrics committee in CLEAN until just 2 years ago. And it would have been nice to have data that dated back, the 7 years that we were in existence. However, there are a few things that I think we can get out of what we've done. So in the report, basically, first of all, I give you a quick background, and I think I'll just read the first 2 paragraphs. The Metrics Committee was formed in March 2010 in order to get an objective measurement of litter so that changes in the amount of litter could be determined, and so that we might be able to see which litter control techniques were working best. We established initially 5 and finally 7 areas where general litter and cigarette butts would be counted over time to track improvement or deterioration of conditions. The exact locations of these areas were kept secret in order to prevent any unintentional bias in litter control procedures. In late 2012, immediately before Beautification Day, we did final litter counts in all areas. Jim Murray and Muriel Grimm coordinated the activity throughout the 2 years. Michelle Corrigan and Michael Gosnell worked on designing the project, with Michelle participating in the early counts. Meredith Shiro participated in many of the counts over a year and a half, and Joan Butcher was also a volunteer in the project. The data are in an Microsoft Access database, And I'm hoping that somebody will be able to, I can output it in various formats, but you can't really analyze the data using the graphs that I brought here tonight, or the charts that I brought here tonight. They're just giving you some general ideas. There are a whole lot of nuances, and then also we don't have enough data, just counting over 2 years, to come to a lot of conclusions. But there are a few things that I think do stand out. The way that we chose our locations, first of all, we picked areas that were hopefully mixed use. First of all, we picked areas throughout the entire city, and they were kind of like mixed use areas. They'd be rentals, homeowner occupied houses, and business areas. Then we chose the streets. We did not do a specific length on every street. Some spots are very short, some spots are fairly long. We counted the two different types of litter. We counted what we called obvious litter, and that is stuff that you see fairly easily. Sometimes kind of small pieces, if they're bright and shiny, they really show up. So, but we didn't go around looking for something about an inch long that was hardly visible. It had to show as you walked along. And then the second thing that was counted was cigarette butts. In the charts that I'm presenting tonight, I did not include any of the cigarette butt counts, and I had intended to, as Jim asked, count up all the litter in the whole database and see how many tens of thousands of pieces we had counted over the 2 years. But I didn't get that number for you, but it's close to that. Let's see, that's what we counted, and the results. Oh, yeah. In the charts, I include something called a litter index. What that does is basically account for the fact that some of the areas were short, some of them were long, distance-wise. So it's the litter per linear foot, but multiplied by 100, because otherwise you'd be dealing with decimals, and there's no real need, since it's only a number so that you can compare one area with the other. It's not a really important number, a scientific number, but it's a very good number for comparing one area to the other. I would like to point out the observations that we made over the 2-year period of time. And I think this is the kind of thing that council may have to address. Most of the litter is attributable to a few houses, and those same houses were responsible for the litter throughout the 2-year period, no matter who was living in them, which was kind of interesting. Some rental properties, totally litter-free. We never see any litter on them. Some of the littered properties were owner-occupied properties. It's not all rentals. Some of the worst littered rentals are owned by the same landlords. Most of the cigarette butts are at properties that have front porches. So they sit on the porch and toss the cigarettes. Litter begets litter. Areas littered with hundreds of cigarette butts also have lots of other litter. You have to be on the sidewalks to see the mess. Sometimes when I'm driving down the street, I say, oh, it looks really great here now. But if I'm out walking on those same streets, I don't feel the same way. There was a lot of litter in April 2010 while there was a litter control officer. In some cases, there was actually less litter in October when there was no officer. However, after that, the litter increased significantly until the time that the new litter control officer was hired. And I think you can see that in the charts. I think it indicates that yes, Clean's suggestion to have a litter control officer definitely made a difference in the amount of litter that's in the city. And at least some tenants we ran into who do seem to be aware that they are violating the law, basically put off cleaning up unless they know they're being threatened with a citation. If we indicated to them that, no, we're not reporting it, we're just counting it, places don't get cleaned up. Our recommendations, one is to establish a way that clear standards of what constitutes a trash violation what constitutes a trash violation is defined and can be understood by both the residents and the code officers. In other words, find a way that this can be done, because Clean has been talking about this for a while, but somehow everyone's got to be on the same page and understand this. The litter control officer and the code officers will, of course, have discretion in writing citations, but at the present time, each officer's interpretation of what is a violation appears to be different. And I indicated in here, the Clean Committee has put together some suggested standards. When these are defined, it might be useful to put sample pictures on a web page so that residents can see them, can get an idea of what's a litter yard and what's a clean yard, and to require in-service training of code officers so that they are all on the same page. 2, create legislation that would address habitually offending houses. Possibilities, much higher fines might be an incentive to end violations. Perhaps assigning some responsibility to the owners of habitual offender houses, not just to the residents, would help. We don't know. This is up to council to work on. 3, establish a process whereby council can be appraised of progress. And this is the point that I made first. Somehow this has got to jump up to the front burner every now and then so that people know what's going on. Determining this progress should require some objective long-term litter measurement. We suggest that at least annually, that says annual, should be an objective assessment of litter control should be made. And then in deference to Operation Clean Sweep, the stated reason for any legislation should include the fact that it is being done, quote, in an effort to transform Athens into one of the cleanest college towns in America. If you want to take a quick look at the charts, as I said, we went out different days in different years to do counts in different places so that you can't compare one to the other very much. You'll just see that in the late, or mostly in the beginning of 2011, late 2010, that was when there was no litter control officer, and that's usually where the spikes occur on here. And otherwise, though, if you kind of ignore some of those spikes, in general, it really doesn't look much different from 2 years ago to today. So it needs some more creative thinking. But let's see. We did notice that there was a drop. This is in brown, next to the last page. A real drop in the last count, and Jim, I think, said that really was the reason was 2 houses basically that have gotten all cleaned up. So it's often, as we found out, just very specific houses, and they are repeated.
Thank you, Muriel. Are you open to questions or other thoughts or reflections from council members? And definitely thank you for your hard work on this, as well as the volunteers that assisted in the collection of the data. appreciate that, and I'm sure the rest of council and the mayor's office does as well.
I think it was really important. Why we didn't think of it earlier, I don't know, but we had no objective way of knowing what was going on.
Member Butler, I think the mayor's office does have something to say.
Okay, thank you.
I know that one of the discussions was to actually add a second litter control officer. And I haven't had a chance to look at all this. I assume you'll send us the data?
Yeah, however you want it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and, let's see, you did not do Court Street, I see.
No.
Okay. I guess, I know we had also instituted 3 years ago about the litter off the curb. Your metrics, did that cover that as well? Or?
Yeah, we looked from, oh yes, where we counted the litter was from the front line of the house to 18 inches off the curb.
So that was let's see. So the other, again, you talk about increasing fines. Technically, each fine goes up 10, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So your recommendation is to go higher than that, or just more often?
Yeah, well, our problem, I guess, is if you have enough people in the house, they may not begin to notice the $100. Yeah.
Let's see. I haven't looked at the citation rates. Did you coordinate any of that with the citation?
No.
Okay. Now, the index is really just normalization per linear foot, is that right here?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
I know you've been working at it hard. In terms of metrics, we needed that. Now I know where they are. I guess we're trying to, we'll have to pick new areas, and somebody will have to pick new areas, because you're not going to be doing it.
Right.
And I'm aware you're leaving. So that's an issue. In fact, we did proclamation day.
Just to embarrass you.
Many years.
Yeah, it went fast. 11 years.
Yes. I know that you worked on the wellhead at one point. You did subdivisions together. We've done litter together. West Neighborhood Association, Town Hall meeting. In fact, I'm told that Carl Duran, Lucas, and me realized that we need a timekeeper for the...
That's right.
Legal women voters. So there's quite a few things there. So let me do a proclamation for you. And I know how much you don't like it.
Yeah.
So it'll have to be done anyway. And I say, I've known you for your whole time here, and at the same time, I realize that I came here to retire. And it just goes to show how much work can be done when you retire and get involved. And this is really from everybody from City Council, although Jim and I signed it. Whereas the City of Athens would like to take this opportunity to honor Muriel Grimm, an outstanding member of the Athens community for her volunteer activities and important initiatives. Whereas one of the founding members of the Clean Committee, she was instrumental in developing a mission and goals for this group while defining the scope of the problem and offering solutions, as demonstrated. I'm sure you noticed. And it's a work in progress. We've got new students every day that have done this. And you and I have both been out there where they don't recognize litter, too. I mean, it is an education for everybody. Sorry to stop right there. But whereas Muriel Grimm has involved for the Citizens for Our Neighborhood, League of Women Voters, and has served as chair of the Southside Community Association, and has been organizer of Athens City Town Hall meetings. And whereas she's worked on hillside land development with the desire of preserving Athens viewshed and was a leading task force member of the Wellhead Protection Plan. And whereas Muriel Grimm has been a great assistant in various community groups, organizations, government committees, as demonstrated too, with a thoughtful analysis, a knowledge, and wisdom. Now therefore, I, Paul Weil, Mayor of the City of Athens, do hereby proclaim Monday, May 14th, Muriel S. Grimm Day, in the City of Athens in recognition of accomplishments above mentioned and our contributions for local participatory democracy. And it's signed by myself. And it's at the end of the day, I know, but that's how I know you'd like it, since you would spend the whole day be embarrassed. But thank you for all your work. It goes to show what one person can do, and such a fine person, too. We will miss you. I know you'll be leaving soon. I don't even know what that time is, but I know it's soon, and going to Virginia. So our loss is Virginia's gain. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to say some words.
Yeah, not much. I'm not prepared for this with a report or anything, but yeah, I want to thank you all. And we really are going to miss Athens. We really don't want to leave, but it's a case of, as you get older, you discover we came here to retire, but then when you get old enough, you say, well, gee, you really should be where your kids can kind of take care of you. So that's why we're headed back to Virginia. But one of the reasons I came to Athens was because of all the exciting, creative people here. And so, I just kind of got the energy going and joined in. And I guess, as my husband says too, I've never met a cause I didn't like, so.
Well, thank you again. Any other questions for you? No?
Thank you, Muriel.
Thank you, Muriel.
We'll do something with the support, I promise. We'll just start working on it. It's ongoing.
I believe that the City Service Safety Director also has a few other miscellaneous.
Coming on because of the clean report is rather appropriate. The Athens Hockey Recycling Center contract is up this year, needs renewed by July 1st, and I'm in current negotiations with Roger Bale going over this, so that will be coming forward too. It will either be a 1 or a 2 year, although the mayor kind of threw me a curveball today and said it might be a 6-month extension. So we'll get that clarified. So.
Part of the dialogue there is, I think, the board, Waste District Board said they'll extend the contract for 6 months. They did not talk about longer, but I don't think there's going to be that many changes in the makeup right now. They're still looking at the policies, the solid waste policy. There'll be a meeting coming up, I think it's June 2nd or 5th, I forget what it is, for the policy meeting. And we're waiting for the EPA to come back and say it's okay, or not. So we need to get that rolling as an authorization for the contract. And of course, we're still looking at move out as well, because that will be coming right at us real quick. So we're trying to get all those pieces working so we recycle the stuff and get it to the appropriate place.
And feed the needy.
Yes, it's a little bit of everything. It's waste, it's reuse, retask.
And along those lines, we're fortunate in this community that there are a number of places where discarded items could be reused and recycled, whether it's through Habitat for Humanity's Restore, whether it's the university. There's also
Reuse, new to you.
Reuse, right, new to you.
Salvation Army.
Thank you.
Yes, as well as food banks for any
Right.
canned goods that the students want to get rid of.
Anything else for miscellaneous? That's it from my end.
Okay, thank you. So that ends our meeting for May 14th. Thank you for being here. We'll see you, and thank you, Muriel, for all your work. We really do appreciate it. And we'll see you a week from tonight.